That's what happens when I play dodgeball. Yeah, fill in. Leaders, fill in when and where you can. Okay. Students. All right. So, if you're new here, welcome. We're glad that you're here. Glad that this is your first time to WSM. This isn't normally what it looks like when we gather. Normally, we actually just started splitting up high school and middle school. But for tonight is a little different. Tonight, we're bringing in a guest speaker to talk about a topic that we believe is really important and relevant in your lives, and that's the topic of suicide. The reality is, you guys, that it is the second leading cause of death for anyone from the ages 10 to 34. Second leading cause of death. I imagine some of you guys are familiar with this topic. And so we want to make sure that the church, Waypoint Student Ministries, that we're a place where we can talk about stuff like this. Mitchell and I believe that this is a place where these conversations happen and where you guys feel like you're cared for and loved enough to have these conversations with us, with your leaders, and with one another. So, if you guys could, scoot in. So some of you guys in the back, fill in the empty space. You guys were fine. But I don't want anyone sitting all the way in the back. There's no reason to. Okay, not too close. Not too close. All right, girls, you're good. You're good. And then, second, thank you, 6th grade boys, for the enthusiasm. I appreciate it. Second, please, I ask that tonight you show our guest speaker more respect than you show myself or Mitchell or any other person with this microphone. She deserves it, and she has a really important story to share tonight, and a really important topic. Some of you have heard this story before, but it's not the same this time around. So please lean in and show respect and pay attention, because you might not know, but the person sitting next to you, this might be what they need to hear right now. Okay? Let's give a round of applause for Leslie Wyrick.
Making sure this is on. Okay, good. Well, I just want to thank Austin and Mitchell for inviting me back here. Some of you might remember me. I was here a couple years ago. I'm not sure how many of you were part of the youth group then, but this is my second time here. So I just really want to thank you for welcoming me back. This is actually a story that I've told many, many times over the past 4 years, but it never gets easier. You think that it would, wouldn't you? I've told it to thousands of people your age. But that's not how our story works. You see, my story starts with this big, strong, good-looking football player. His name is Austin, just like your youth group leader's name is Austin. Now, my Austin, he was the president of his freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior class at Goshen High School. He actually ran track and played football all 4 years he was there. In fact, he even went on to become the scholar athlete in one or both of those sports every year of high school. He went on to graduate in the top 3% of his class and received $26,000 in renewable academic scholarships, which allowed him to go on and play football at Wabash College in Crawfordsville, Indiana. For those of you who don't know, There are only 3 colleges that are left in the entire United States that are all male, and Wabash is proudly one of them. So those young men who choose that college, they form a brotherhood. And the ones on that football team, well, they've got a bond like no other. Austin worked very hard. He was very disciplined. He knew what he wanted to do. He dug into the books, and he chose to major in economics, and he minored in business. He had plans to go on to law school or possibly graduate school and get an MBA. He actually always loved leadership because he felt like he was called to make a difference in the world, and he wanted to be a leader. So Austin, when he attended college, he became the president of an organization called the Independent Men's Association. Because this was an all-male campus, over half of the students lived in fraternity and the other half chose to be independent. So Austin was very independent. He was an independent guy, an independent thinker. So he represented this group really, really well. He was also a member of something called the War Council. Now, the War Council stood for Wabash Acts Responsibly. What they do is they help students when the stress of college life gets to be just too overwhelming for them. They help them make good decisions. They talk about things like drinking on campus, drugs and alcohol, anxiety, depression, mental health issues. Austin was, in fact, scheduled to lead a meeting for that group on the morning of Monday, September the 12th, 2016. But unfortunately, our son Austin never showed up for that meeting. He never showed up because in the early morning hours of Saturday, September the 10th, 2016, everything in his life and in ours was about to take a turn. It all started about 2:30 in the morning with someone ringing our doorbell like crazy. Now that's a sound that none of your parents ever want to hear, but especially at 2:30 in the morning. My husband Keith, Austin's dad, he's a very light sleeper. I'm sorry, he's a very heavy sleeper. I'm a very light sleeper. So as soon as I heard the doorbell ringing, the pounding on our door, I jumped out of bed as fast as I could. And I said to my husband Keith, "Someone is at our front door." We quickly ran downstairs, and I said through the door, "Who is it?" And they answered back, "Goshen Police." And at that moment, I looked through the front window to see the police car parked in front of our house. While my husband was still running downstairs, I opened the front door. I couldn't even imagine what was going on. Our son Austin was 165 miles away at college, and our 16-year-old daughter Hannah was asleep in her room. Why on earth would the police be at our door at 2:30 in the morning? Well, what we were about to find out would change our lives forever. The police officer said, "Do you have a son named Austin Wyrick who attends Wabash College?" I said, "Yes. Yes, I do." Then came the words that absolutely no parent ever wants to hear. "You need to call this number because your son has been in an accident." I grabbed the card out of his hand and I ran back into our house as fast as I could to find my cell phone. At the time, Keith and I were both standing in the kitchen when I called the number on that card, and the dean of the college answered. He said there'd been an accident that evening in Austin's townhouse. Austin was with his girlfriend, and he had shot himself. He said that the ambulance was transporting him to St. Vincent's Hospital, about 45 minutes away, and we needed to get there as fast as possible. In that moment, I knew we were about to face the hardest night of our lives. But I also realized we had to be strong for our daughter. We went upstairs to tell her that her brother had been in an accident. We asked her to pray for Austin. We told her we had to get to Indianapolis, and we would update her when we had more news. Now, I have seen some really, really bad thunderstorms in my lifetime, but I've never, ever seen rain or lightning or thunder like we drove through that night. We had a 3-hour drive ahead of us. We were only about 20 minutes down the road when my cell phone rang. It was the emergency room doctor from St. Vincent's. He asked if we were on our way. I said that we were, and then he asked if we could pull over on this side of the road so he could talk to us. He said he was sorry to tell us that the ambulance had just arrived with Austin, and there was no pulse. I said, "What do you mean?" It's like my head and my heart couldn't even process the words he was saying. He said, "I'm sorry to tell you that your son did not survive the accident, but we still need you to come. But please be careful driving through the storm." In that moment, my husband Keith, Austin's dad, who was about the most soft-spoken man I've ever known in my life, cried out to God. We both just sat in darkness on the side of that road and listened to the rain pounding on our windshield. Finally, we drove out in silence, except for the rain, which never, ever let up. When we got closer to the hospital, Keith looked over at me, and he said, "It's like God is crying with us tonight." And I believe that he was. I really believe that he was. Even though we were in total shock and grief as we drove into that parking lot, we were about to experience the power of the Holy Spirit revealed to us in ways and through people that even to this day, 4 years later, I can't explain to you. In Isaiah 43:2, it tells us, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze." We were about to be carried through the rest of the night and into the next morning by the love and mercy of Jesus Christ, who sent his people to us. Keith dropped me off at the front door of the emergency room while he was parking the car. I ran in as fast as I could, and I told them who I was. And when I looked up, there was this man walking toward me with a hospital jacket on. He said, "Mrs. Wyrick, my name is Paul, and I am the chaplain here." About that time, Keith came in, and Chaplain Paul took us in the back to a lounge where we could sit down. If I live to be 99 years old, I will never forget that man's face or his voice, especially his voice. We were only sitting down for a few minutes when the doctor and the nurse, who were both men, came into the lounge to talk to us. They asked if we wanted to see our son, and I have absolutely no idea where these words came from. But immediately, I said no, because our son's not here anymore. Austin's dad and I have never, ever regretted that decision. But here's where the most amazing act of kindness and mercy and love came through in that night. Because of a suicide, someone has to identify the body. Did you all know that? Did you know that? Have you thought about that? Who would you like to identify your body? Because those are the things that are going to happen that they don't show you about on Netflix and all of these shows that glamorize suicide. That's what really happens. Somehow, in the depths of my grief in those early morning hours, I seem to remember that my son Austin had a really unique football injury on his left ring finger. And as I started to describe it to the doctor, Chaplain Paul spoke up. And he said, "Mr. and Mrs. Wyrick, I'll go back. I'll go back for you and identify your son's body." What an incredible act of love and kindness that could have only been given to us by someone who'd walked in our shoes. 2 Corinthians 1:4 tells us he gives us comfort in our trials so that we may in turn be able to give the same sort of sympathy to others in theirs. Before he went back to identify Austin's body for us, Chaplain Paul asked if he could pray over us. And he asked God to comfort us in the same way he had been given comfort just 3 years earlier when he had lost his 17-year-old son. You see, that's how God works. He never wastes our pain. So that's why I've come here tonight to talk to you. After Austin died, I prayed to God. I asked him to show us how we could use Austin's life and our tragedy for something good. So as we were planning Austin's celebration of life service, there was a scripture verse that really just popped out in front of my eyes. And I've clung to this verse for the last 4 years. Genesis 50:20 says, "You intended to harm me, but God used it for good, to establish what is now being done, the saving of many, many lives." Before we left St. Vincent's Hospital that morning, we were able to donate both of Austin's heart valves, his corneas, and all of his bone and tissue. Many lives were restored and saved because of my son's decision to become an organ donor, and he signed the back of his driver's license before we ever left the hospital. A week later, we established the Austin Wyrick Memorial Scholarship Fund. And in the past several years, we've been able to give away over $6,000 in college scholarships in Austin's memory. And in April of this year, I established a nonprofit agency called Clearly Hope. And I've had the opportunity to speak with thousands of young people throughout our state and not only give them a strong message of hope, but actually practical tools for how to hold on and make better choices and not take their lives. So getting back to the reason that I came here tonight, it's because I have absolutely no other choice. The night I walked across the stage with my husband Keith to award the first college scholarship in Austin's memory, God clearly spoke to me. I mean, I could hear him. He told me that he could continue to use Austin's life and our story to save many, many lives. So even though this would not have been the path we would have chosen for our son or our family, we still believe in a God who can take our tragedy and use it for good. And I have seen so much evidence of this in the past 4 years. And I'm going to share some of that with you in a little bit. Romans 8:28 is another verse that says, "In all things, all things, all things, even suicide, God works for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose." So once again, that's why I've come here tonight. That's why I put myself through those details that I would much rather forget, because this is now God's purpose for my life. I know my son very well, and if he were here tonight, he'd be the first person to tell you what an incredibly stupid thing he did and how he wished he could take it back. He would tell you that you never, ever want your parents' doorbell ringing at 2:30 in the morning. And he would absolutely tell you you never want to ask somebody who loves you to have to identify your body. But he's not here tonight. So I speak for him. And I speak on behalf of Austin. And I've not come here as a professional speaker, but just as a mom, to talk to you about hope. Do you guys know about hope? Do Do you know that we can actually live 40 days without food? We can live 3 days without water. We can even live 8 minutes without air. But only 1 second without hope. Because if you only remember only one thing I say here tonight, this is it. This is my takeaway. No one ever dies of suicide. They don't. Their circumstances are different. Their backgrounds are different. Their ages are different. What led up to that moment is different. But it comes down to that moment, that single moment when they lose hope and they can't see to the next moment when things are going to get better. So we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about how to hang on. We're going to talk about what to do when you feel like that, okay? We're going to get real here tonight. I'm going to ask you guys to do some things tonight, and we're going to get honest. You've seen me be real up here, and I'm going to ask you to be real. You know, my son Austin FaceTimed me for 45 minutes the day that he died. He even called his dad at 6:30 that night to catch up with him. He was on top of the world. He talked about his classes that semester. He told me all about his weekend plans. He said he was going out for burgers with the guys that night because the football team had a bye weekend, and they were all going to go out to the home of one of his friends and watch the Notre Dame game the next day. In fact, believe it or not, Austin even worked out and lifted weights at 4:30 that afternoon. I know, because I picked up his wet towels that were still damp after that shower. Austin had no intention of taking his life that night, but he panicked. In that moment, in that split second, he lost hope and he lost his life. About a week after he died, my neighbor came down to see me. She told me she was just so sorry and that she just couldn't even understand how this could happen to a kid like Austin Wyrick. How if this could happen to Austin, it could happen to anyone's kid, any of you, any of us. Suicide doesn't look like Austin. It looks like everyone. It looks like all of us. At the time I was so deep in my grief, I just couldn't even really listen to her words. But pretty soon I was going to find out how true they were. On September 10th of 2018, we marked the 2-year anniversary of Austin's death. Now, I'll be honest with you. The first year was pretty rough. We were just getting through it. But on the 2nd year anniversary, we wanted to remember Austin and celebrate his life in a meaningful way. So at the end of that day, as his dad and I were getting ready for bed, I received a text message from one of Austin's former roommates. He said, "Mrs. Wyrick, I don't know if you heard today, but Evan Hansen, the co-captain of the Wabash football team, took his life. I'm so sorry to have to tell you this today, Mrs. Wyrick, but I just didn't want you to hear about it on the news, especially today." So our grief, which we were still learning how to figure out, was now compounded as we shared it with the Hansen family of Carmel, Indiana. We knew the journey that was ahead of them, and our hearts ached for their family. Evan Hansen was only 21 years old and about to graduate with a double major in Spanish and biology. He had just been recognized 2 days earlier on the football field with his parents on Senior Saturday. He was strong and bright and incredibly kind and compassionate. Evan had plans to go on to graduate school at Marian University and become a nurse and work in underprivileged countries. And just like my son, Evan had plans to make the world a better place. But in that split second, he lost hope, and he lost his life. And the world lost another young man who had so much to offer. So my neighbor's words, they've become all too prophetic over the past 4 years. If this can happen to young men like Evan and Austin and Adam Hooley, okay? We're going to talk about Middlebury tonight. Suicide comes to Middlebury too. That's why I'm here. You saw the pictures of my son. That's the face of suicide. It's not what you were thinking, was it? Me either. So it's hard to be here tonight. It's hard. My story is hard. And even though I've told it to dozens of groups, thousands of people, I've spoke to groups as small as 25 and as large as 750 at the Memorial Coliseum in Fort Wayne. But I still cry every single time I tell it, 4 years later. And I talk to God and I say, please, please, I don't want to have to relive these details. Let that be the last time I have to tell our story. And then I get a call from a school or a church who's just had the funeral of a beautiful 19-year-old boy. And God sends me back out to tell it again. But I'm going to share with you what motivates me and why I started my nonprofit, Clearly Hope, and why I'm here tonight. I'm going to share some good news with you right now. Very first talk I gave was to a group of about 75 young people about your age. At the very end of my talk, a young girl about 17 ran out the back of the room. The day before my talk, she was one of 6 children. She'd written 5 letters to her brothers and sisters saying goodbye. She was prepared to take her life the next day. She came to my talk. She went home. She turned the letters into her mom. She broke down and said, "I'm so sorry this could have been our family. I never realized what suicide does to a family until I heard her story." Here's the good news. She's a sophomore at Indiana University in Bloomington, studying business this fall. That's why I do what I do. That's why I keep going back out. I've got a lot of stories like that. And my prayer here tonight is that if any of you here are hurting, are feeling something that you haven't been able to tell somebody, you want to talk but you don't know how, tonight's your night. Tonight's your night. We're going to open up. We're going to get real. There's a lot of people in this room who care about you. I know Austin does. I know Mitchell does. So tonight, I'm going to ask you guys to do something. I want you all just to close your eyes, just for a minute. Let's keep them closed. Raise your right hand if you've ever had a bad day. Raise your left hand if you really wished you could have talked to somebody and told them about that bad day. Now open your eyes and look around. You're not alone. You're not alone. We've all gone through something. We've all had bad days. And I said I'm going to get real tonight, so I'm talking to you boys here, okay? Suicide is 4 to 1 in boys. Young men take their lives 4 times as much as young women. And this might surprise you. Young women attempt 3 times more than boys. So anybody have any idea why boys take their lives more? You don't talk. You keep it all in until you can't anymore. So that's what tonight's about. We're not keeping it in anymore. You can't keep your feelings inside. Every one of us in this room here tonight, Austin, Mitchell, me, all of us, we've all had tough times. And we'll probably have some more tough times. Sometimes they last for a few hours, sometimes a day, sometimes longer. But we will go through something. None of us is going to get out of this life without going through something. You know, Jesus told us to get ready for it, didn't he? Didn't he tell us in John 16:33, in this world you will have trouble. You will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. He's got COVID under control. He's not worried about the pandemic. So make no mistake here, it's not a mistake that you're here tonight. I don't know what got you here. I don't know how your day looked today. But God knew you needed to be here tonight, every single one of you, to hear our story. So when the bad weeks, the bad months maybe, come, they're not going to last forever. I promise you they won't. Every 8 hours, someone in the state of Indiana takes their life. So by the time you go to bed tonight and get up in the morning, another person, probably a young person, will have taken their life again. Breaks my heart to say that happened right here in Middlebury this summer. And I'm here tonight to keep it from happening again. No more suicide. You have options. You have choices. You have hope. So there's a couple things I want to talk to you tonight from a practical perspective. And they're things that I believe are very simple to use and really, really helpful. I'm sure you all have phones, smartphones. There's an app that you can get, and I'll make sure that Mitchell and Austin know how to show you guys where it is. It's free, okay? It's a free app. It's called Not Okay. Not Okay. It's a locator app, all right? This is GPS tracking. In this app, Not Okay, you can put the names of up to 5 people in there, okay? Your trusted circle, 5 people. But here's going to be the tricky part for you guys. You can't put your friends' names in there. That's the hard part, isn't it? I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. You saw my son. Big guy, huh? 6'4", 240 pounds, defensive end. Big guy. He had 7 more years until his brain was finished growing, till it was fully developed. Anybody in here know what your prefrontal cortex is in your brain? You know what it's used for? Decisions. It's your higher level reasoning. It's your decision making, okay? So they used to say that that part of our brains was fully developed when we were 25. Researchers now have changed that, and they're saying 27 years old before that's fully developed. So my son looked like this big, strong guy. He had 7 more years for his brain to be fully developed. So that's why if you're 15 or 16 and you're in here tonight, you've got maybe 11 or 12 more years for your brain to grow. That's why you can't put your friends' names in there, okay? Because their reasoning, their logic, their decision making, it's on the same level with yours. It's not finished growing. So it's got to be a trusted adult, somebody that you know, somebody that you know will come and rescue you, pick you up on the side of the road. Because it's really, really important that you understand what I'm saying here tonight. Your feelings matter. Your feelings are important. But you can't make a permanent decision about a temporary problem based on how you're feeling in that moment. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Because tomorrow, things are going to look a whole lot different. An hour from now, things are going to look a whole lot different. And you need to stick around. You need to stick around for the good things that are coming in your life. So getting back to the Not Okay app, you need to put a trusted adult in there. You can put up to 5 people, someone that you can call any time of the day or night. So they're going to know they have to accept it when you put them in there, okay? You having a bad day? You had a breakup with your boyfriend. You had a fight with your girlfriend. You posted something stupid you wished you could take back. Whatever's going on, and you just feel like, man, I don't think I can get through today. Not okay. You got it? Your people, your person's going to get there. Sit with you on the side of the road, listen to you, judgment-free. No matter how stupid you think, I can't tell anybody what I did. That's your person. You can tell them. They'll meet you. They'll sit with you. They'll stick with you till things start to look better and you can hang on to hope. Because every one of you has a purpose and a reason for being here tonight. And I never, ever want any of your parents to hear their doorbell ring at 2:30 in the morning. So I want you to remember 2 things tonight. 1, we all struggle, every one of us. And if you haven't so far, you've been blessed, but it's coming. We all face tough times, tough days. So, let's just talk about this crazy time we're living in, right? Wearing masks, quarantine, isolation. Your generation, wow, you guys are being asked to do things that I never even thought about at my age. I mean, the way you have to go to school right now, all the COVID restrictions, who wouldn't be stressed out about that? It's normal. It's normal. So you need to find somebody to talk to. Be aware of how you're feeling. If you feel like you're starting to go to a place where, whoa, I gotta talk to somebody, you've got that app, okay? When you think you're heading down a road where you might not be able to come back from it, you need to talk to somebody. There's also one more thing. I'm going to leave these tonight here, and you guys can take pictures of them with Mitchell and with Austin. This is a crisis text line, okay? I want you guys to take a picture of this and put it on your phones. These are licensed clinical therapists, okay? 24/7, free. You can call this, well, it's a text, I'm sorry. You can text the word connect. You can also text the word home, but connect, okay? Connect to 741-741. Anytime, whether you're at school, the middle of the night, something happens, you can text this number. I'm going to leave these with Austin and Mitchell. Get this on your phone. Get the Not Okay app on your phone. Make sure, because you know what? We need you to stick around. This world needs you to make it a better place, okay? I really appreciate you giving me the time to tell you our story tonight, and I really hope and pray that it's given you a reason to share your own. Because just remember, 1 second is all it takes to hang on to hope. So thank you for letting me be here tonight. And I'm open to taking any questions that you might have. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys. Now, you might have some thoughts in your head right now that you don't know what to do with. If there's something on your mind, do not leave without talking to one of us. We have some time. If you have a question or you want to talk to Leslie about something, she's here. If you want to come talk to Austin or I or your small group leader, now is the time to do that. We have some time before your parents are going to be here for middle schoolers and before we dive into small groups for high schoolers. If you are in high school and don't have my phone number, come see me. I will put it in your phone if I have to. If you're a middle schooler and you don't have Austin's phone number, go talk to him before you leave. We want to be that person for you. If you have someone else that you trust, that you can reach out to in that low moment, when it comes, that's fine too. But we want you to have our number. And we want you to know, even if it is 2:30 in the morning, we will take that call. We want to take that call. Because we do love you guys. And not just love you the way that Christ tells us we have to love everyone, but we like all of you. Yes, Trey, I even like you. A little bit. Seriously though, we do. We want you guys to stick around. If you're in a low spot and you don't know what to do, you don't know where to go, you don't know what to turn to, come talk to us. We'll help you walk through that. We want to have these conversations. We want to have these conversations before you get to that point. So even if you see yourself heading down that road, or maybe you don't see yourself heading all the way down that road, but it's maybe going that direction, you're not even sure, come talk to us. We want to talk to you. Open up in your small group. Talk to your small group leader. Talk to your parents. You need somebody. You need somebody that you can talk to that is not the person sitting next to you, is not the person that's sitting next to you in class or sitting across from you at lunch. Somebody that's older, that's been around a little bit, that has seen some of this stuff. We've been there. Austin and I have both been there. We've been in the low moments. We still have those low moments. And we especially know that these past 6 months have been hard. They've been very hard. And you've probably experienced emotions that you're not sure how to deal with. And maybe emotions you've never felt before. I have. I have been at a very low point over these past 6 months. I think both of us can say that we have. Where we got burned out. We just didn't want to do this anymore. I'm just sick of it all. But we've got people that we talk to. We love you guys. We want you to be around. We don't want you to have to suffer in silence. So be vocal. That's what your small groups are for. That's what this building is for. That's why we use this building, is to create these environments, to create these relationships, to create this open atmosphere where you can share anything and not be judged, and not be looked down on, not be made fun of. We want to dig into the trenches with you because we love you and we care about you. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to share something. Yeah. So I think every time we have this talk, it hits me different because I have a really close friend who just was this close to taking their life. And it was because she felt like she didn't have any friends. She felt like she didn't have anyone she could talk to, not even, I thought we were close. And for those of you who are friends of people in this room, I pray for you guys that you guys just take that seriously, that you pour into one another, and that you listen when God is calling you to call someone. This friend of mine was this close to ending her life, and she got a phone call from a friend that she hadn't heard from in a while. And she thought, you know what? I haven't spoken to this person in a while. I'm just gonna pretend it's not happening right now. A couple minutes later, her phone's ringing again. And she picks up the phone, and her friend is like, you know what? I felt like I had to call you right now. I don't know why. And that friend saved my sister's life. If you're an older brother or a sibling in this room, man, I hope that speaks to you. I hope this story speaks to you. I hope this conversation resonates with you. And I hope you guys leave tonight feeling encouraged that you're not alone and that you're loved and you're cared about. And if you aren't, if you don't feel like that, talk to someone. Talk to one of us. Talk to your small group leader. I'd encourage you guys, download that app, Not Okay. That's big time. And don't be afraid to hit that button or reach out to that person. We love you guys. We have about 10 minutes left for middle school. And so I just want to give you guys the opportunity to get together in your small groups and pray. And so if you guys would, just go do that real quick. And then high school, if you could go up in the flat, that'd be great. We're going to go into our small groups and just take a second to pray for one another.